Tzadik Beis Amud Aleph 92a. Tzadik Beis Amud Aleph. What did I say? Okay. 92a. So as you mentioned on Friday, we concluded our discussion on the positive virtues of Das. And as we explained it, Das is the capacity to feel, or to, more than feel, is to connect to that which a person understands, or that which a person comprehends. And this sensing of the realness of it, connecting to it, brings to all the good things. A person is empathetic. That's when a person can bring Hashem into his life, not just in the abstract, theoretically. Creates a mikdash, creates a sanctuary within himself, etc. So, before we go to the next thing, I think I mentioned that I'm going to attempt to, connect this to the idea of Tbeis HaMesim. So perhaps, we mentioned well back, and this is kind of the way we've been learning the Gemara, that Mashiach's time is the sum total and the objective of everything we've been doing, based on, this is not unique to Tanya, but it's explained in chapter 37, that the revelation of Mashiach's coming is the conglomerate of the thousands of years we've been working to serve Hashem. That's what it is, the culmination. And therefore we explained the previous Gemara, where it talked about a person bringing into the resurrection that which he has experienced in his life. Because that's what the resurrection is. It's the end total of everything we've been doing. And therefore the person who shares Torah, who's fulfilling his purpose in life, that comes with him in the Messianic era. A person who doesn't teach Torah, has all kinds of punishments. Even the fetus in the womb of the mother curses him because he's not fulfilling his purpose. He's not fulfilling the world's purpose, as we explained. So perhaps this Gemara leads to that, in that a person could understands Torah very well, and even teaches Torah very well, and can still lack Das. He understands Torah, he has a good mouth, he has a good tongue, so he can explain Torah to the others, but personally, he hasn't connected to the ideas and made himself into a mikdash. Perhaps this is the flow here. This is the flow of the conversation here, where it starts with the fulfillment of the purpose of creation, culminating in Mashiach's coming, that purpose being realized by one who teaches Torah, and the purpose being obstructed by one who holds Torah back. And then the Gemara goes on to say that even if you're understanding Torah and you're teaching Torah, if you're lacking Das, if you're lacking the connectivity, there's also a big problem here. And that you personally aren't being made into a mikdash, you personally aren't being turned into a sanctuary for Hashem's presence, even if you're teaching others. Perhaps. And this will kind of help us in the next Gemara, the next section of the Gemara, where the Gemara goes through the great loss of one who lacks Das. I should note that just on a simple level, the reason why all these things are coming in, all these things are being mentioned here, is because they're all statements made by Rabbi Lezer. I'm giving a connection in the content, but on a simple level, it's all because Rabbi Lezer is speaking. Okay. Rabbi Lezer says, Kol Adam, any person, it's the first line that's the widest size, and it's the fourth word. The first line, that's the widest line on Tzadik Beis Amud Aleph, the fourth word, Bein Shtei Oisies Ve'amar. See it?
92b?
A. Tzadik Beis Amud Aleph, 92a. Got it? Show me the page.
No, I have Rabbi Elazar Kol Adam
Das. Yes, it's the next line down. Sorry, it's the next line down. It's the second.
Third line.
The second of the widest size line. The line starts with the word Kol, Hain, Yakar, V'naim, and the fifth word is V'amar. Kol, Hain, Yakar. The line begins with the word Kol, Hain, Yakar, V'naim.
The fourth one.
The fourth one, yeah, my apologies. Well, it gets wider on the other side, it's the second line. But anyway, okay. We have it. V'amar Rabbi Lezer stated, Kol Adam Shein Baideya, anybody who lacks Das, Aser Larachem Alav. It is forbidden to have compassion on him.
The one he said.
Anybody who lacks Das, it's forbidden to have Rachmanos on them, to have mercy, to have compassion on them. Forbidden. Asur.
The one who he makes, he has a Das.
Someone who doesn't have Das, then you cannot have Rachmanos on them. We're going to explain. This is the statement. Shenemar, the verse reads, Ki loy am binois hu, because they are not understanding people. This pasuk comes from from Yeshaya. I'm not sure what the context is, but it comes from Yeshaya. It comes from Yeshaya, yes. Isaiah 27:11. I don't know the context, my apologies.
The context is basically giving mutter to the people.
Is it Jewish people?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not following the ways of Hashem and they're going to suffer the consequences.
Right.
Because they thought, Hashem is always racking, so we can do what we want. Hashem
We're
will
impervious.
But at the point where Hashem doesn't overlook, will be
Right.
me.
So they're not understanding people, they're lacking das. Okay, and therefore their maker will not have compassion on them. And their maker and their former, the one who formed them, meaning Hashem, will not show grace. The point being, the lack of das calls for no grace and no compassion. Why is that? Perhaps, I can think of this in two ways, in two practical ways in which it makes a lot of sense. So, as we explained, das is the connectivity to the ideas. Not just a person understands whatever it is, but a person connects to it. So, the extreme case of one who has no das at all, of course there are levels within das itself and levels of connection to the ideas. But here I think is talking about someone who has none at all. Ein boidea, not that he has a low level of das. He connects to the ideas, but not so deeply. No connection whatsoever, which means he understands everything, but doesn't have the connection. The Rebbe Rashab writes, based on other sources, that das is the capacity a person has to be mafchin, to discern between good and evil. That's what das does. Why? It's a das. Why? Because a person, purely abstract intellect, doesn't tell you what you should and shouldn't do. It just analyzes what is. So a person can analyze a situation, and without das, doesn't come to the conclusion, this is good and this is bad, that's right, that's wrong. That's a conclusion that is drawn by connecting to what you've ever observed. And therefore, I think we use the example in the extreme case of a sociopath. Sociopath who understands the situation very well. If they're high-functioning sociopaths, they understand it better than most people because they're highly intelligent. But they don't have the connectivity to what they're observing, and therefore there's no conclusion as to this is right, this is bad, this is wrong. There's just what serves me and what doesn't serve me. That kind of person, asur l'rachim alav. It's forbidden to have compassion on a sociopath, because he will likely use that compassion and manipulate you right back, or other people. That's how sociopaths work. They understand your weaknesses and will exploit it. And it can get so extreme, whereas I'm really talking about an extreme case. In other words, a person can't decide, oh, this guy has no das, I'm not having rachmanis. Calm down. We're talking about a very, very extreme case of high-functioning sociopathy. I'm not saying that nobody here has experienced that. I'm just noting that it's an extreme case. And I'll give you another extreme case where you'll see this as well. But there are extreme cases where a person understands the situation very well, extremely well, but doesn't have a sensitivity to what's good and what's bad in the situation, and will manipulate anything, including the weakness the other people have for compassion, will play the role of a victim and use it to manipulate. That's one extreme level, a person who lacks das completely, even if they're highly intelligent, and therefore asur l'rachim alav. One.
So are you equating das with empathy?
Yeah. Das is empathy.
Okay.
Correct. The sense of connectivity to
that
the
was
thing.
the Yom for last Friday. Exactly that. Where the story, the illustrating story was when the Rebbe Rashab was playing Chassid Rebbe.
He didn't sigh.
And he gave a decision. He said, "This is my spiritual problem. Here's the decision." And he said, "I'm not listening to him because he didn't
sigh.
The Yom was about empathy. The person in a situation of judgment or a decision has to relate in some way to the problem, not just can't be just dry and tasteless. Okay, here's the decision based on totally on intellect with
there's no connectivity. That's das, absolutely.
There's no das.
That's das. Das is the key to all of Chabad way of serving Hashem. It's all about das. There's learning is the first level, and then
They should avoid to say that.
yeah, as you explained it. Sorry.
They should avoid to say they have that.
Sorry.
The Lubavitch, most of them, they have that. They don't have that. You learn this. It's not easy to have that.
Different levels.
Okay. So yeah.
On a worldwide basis, haven't we really witnessed this with respect to the nations vis-a-vis Israel? That in overall that they lack connectivity.
Yeah. So some are actually. It's an interesting point because sometimes anti-Semitism is like hatred motivated. There's a lot of connectivity. There's a lot of emotion. It's not cold. I think a good example is Germany. The Nazis didn't kill Jews out of crime of passion. They looked at Jews as a cancer, in their own words. A doctor doesn't hate the cancer when it removes it. It's clinical. Just removes it. So I think the Nazis are kind of an example of this nationwide sociopathy where they just completely lack das. Just, this is bad, this is ruining the country, take it out. Feelings, no feelings, completely not relevant. They weren't like, passionately chasing, it was clinical, in a way. Maybe. At any rate, so I think this is one extreme example of a person who has no das and therefore also the Rachamav has no compassion because they're lacking connectivity. This is on an extreme level where the person you're looking at, you shouldn't even feel a sense of Rahmanis, never mind behave towards them compassionately, because they're lacking any sense of what you're feeling, empathy, and they'll just exploit it. Another example, I think, on the other extreme, is a person who's, God forbid, is an addict. And a person has gone down to the addiction has gone down to the point where even though they understand that their addiction is bad, but they don't sense the urgency of it, they're lacking a certain connectivity, a certain das, to sense the urgency of it, that if they don't stop, this is going to kill them. So in that case, maybe it's a good thing to feel compassion, but you should not act compassionately to that person. You're not doing them any favors. You're not doing them any favors.
Don't give money to the addict. So
that's correct. Giving charity to the addict is not a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from a very good place, but it's not a good thing. So that's why I said that when it comes to like a sociopath, you shouldn't even feel compassion to that person, as difficult as it is. If you're an empathetic person and you see someone, you feel a sense, maybe deep down you feel a sense of compassion to the fact that they have no compassion. But their plight that they're presenting to you is usually, in extreme sociopathy, is usually invented and there to manipulate your weakness feeling for empathetic. But someone who's, God forbid, an addict and doesn't have the das, doesn't have a sense of urgency, not just understanding this is bad. Many addicts understand what they're doing is bad, but the feeling that this is really bad for them now, not just abstract, they can explain why it's bad, but feel and sense the urgency of this is bad, right? It's also l'rachamalav. Having compassion to them is allowing them to say it's still okay, it's still not so bad. Unfortunately for many, this is one of the reasons they have to hit rock bottom, because they need to hit a point where they can tell themselves this is really bad, and not just explain that it's bad. They knew before they hit rock bottom that was bad for them, but they didn't feel it. On a not such extreme case, we're going to get to this in a few chapters in Tanya on Shabbos. We're learning about dealing with sensitive depression, and the second thing that Dr. B'Sai is going to talk about is timtum alev, a blocked heart. Someone who feels cold, feels indifferent to service of Hashem. Timtum alev, he can't get an emotion going. So we're going to learn in later chapters that one of the solutions is that he should break himself. He should make himself feel bitter. What's the point? The problem with timtum alev, the reason why the person feels no excitement for serving Hashem, because he looks at his life and he says everything's fine. Everything's fine. I don't have to do any more, I don't have to do any less. I'm doing everything fine. I'm a firm Jew. I'm doing what I have to, and everything's good. All right? So he has to get to a point where he says, no, it's not okay. And once he gets to a point where he really feels, not just understands, but feels, this is not okay, then the emotions start flowing. And from there you can go into joy, into simcha. So it's a similar kind of thing, not so extreme, but it's a similar kind of thing where a person's lacking feeling, he's lacking a das, and what's the solution? That he hits a, quote, rock bottom. He artificially creates a rock bottom for himself by talking about by reminding himself of his own sin and how his sin has distanced himself from Hashem, and thus making a whole calculation to himself how things are not okay. And then when he breaks down in front of that, then the feelings start to flow, because das has been opened, and the feelings start to flow. But a person who doesn't have the feelings for what is detrimental in their own lives, so again, I say that there's a statement from the Gemara, but I believe that the Gemara is talking about extreme cases, and one shouldn't just flippantly use this and say, use the Gemara's card. That guy has no das, no mercy. Just think twice, thrice, and 4 times. Talk to other people before you just conclude that guy's a sociopath or that guy's an addict and deserves no compassion.
The Mishnah does say judge every person favorably. So.
That's right. But it's not a contradiction.
Yeah.
You could judge an addict favorably and yet still not show any compassion, because you know it's going to be worse for them.
Or a different kind of compassion. You have to show the compassion to go to like a recovery place. Like you don't just leave from the street, but try to bring them to a place where
That's done sometimes with a strong arm.
Yeah, but that's still mercy, because
It's right.
let him be.
Right. That's why I said the difference between not right. That's what I mentioned. When it comes to the sociopath, you shouldn't even feel anything. When it comes to the addict, you should feel lots of compassion. Just don't act compassionately, because it'll just feed him.
But there's nothing to give him.
Not in the way he thinks compassion is. Yeah.
Not compassionately, like put him in a place, like maybe even pay for recovery, whatever.
Yeah.
He can't pay himself. That's
yeah.
Also, the idea of Ein Bodek can also mean a person has no moral compass. He's him right or wrong.
Right. So yeah.
There's not the question of empathy. He may be empathetic in certain cases, but in terms of right or wrong, he has no moral compass.
That's a good point. If Das is the capacity to be able to discern what's good and what's no good, then even if someone is empathetic, generally speaking, but in terms of his morality doesn't have, which is actually going to connect to a Gemara in a moment about Seif Gola. Yeah?
Exactly, that's the reason.
Which is what I wanted to talk about when I get there, yeah. That's a good point. Thank you. Sorry?
I know on one particular synagogue, you have people who, one who's an addict, they keep on giving him money. Now what happened, I'm going to ask you the question here, and he's Jewish, he's known in the community, okay? So we seem to have so much Rachmanas, well, help him along so he can keep on smoking, keep up his addiction. I mean, what do you do here? My question is, what do you do?
It's a good question. I don't know the particulars of the case. I'm not going to answer, and certainly not in public. I have to do a proper...
If you know somebody's an addict.
We've dealt with situations like that, and we've dealt with it.
Project Pride for that.
What do you mean?
Chabad Project Pride.
You're talking about Chabad Chai Lifeline?
Isn't it called Project Pride?
Chabad Lifeline?
Yeah, Project Pride.
From Chabad Lifeline?
Yeah, Rabbi Fine.
Yeah,
Rabbi finds
correct, yeah.
It's
part of Chabad Lifeline, yeah.
They deal with addictions, with alcohol, and with...
They deal with also interventions.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not the time for now to make such a judgment, but it's definitely something to take into consideration. Okay, so... this leads to the next Gemara, which is... Rabbi further states, anybody who gives of his bread, the Misha Ein Baideya, to one who has no das, Yisurin Bayan Alav, then affliction comes upon him. Who's the him? Presumably the person who's giving this bread, or giving charity, to the one who has no das. This is kind of what we're talking about here, that's why it flows right in.
Well, I mean, if he's an addict.
Yeah, you're causing...
And he's hungry.
Yeah.
You don't have to give money where he's going to use it for drugs. But I've seen Itchy years ago. I remember a guy was coming here all the time. He was asking for money, and Itchy said he looked
no money, but you'll get food.
You're hungry. Put him in his car and took him to get him to feed him.
I've done that also, but
money, but he fed him.
I've done that also. Like when I used to go to, when I was living in New York, I never used to give money to people collecting, but I used to give like food. But there are signs in the subways which say not even to do that.
Really?
Yeah, there are signs in the subway not even to do that for this reason. Even food.
Sounds like
even food.
You should even feed.
Yeah. It's very difficult. I'll tell you my own experience. I've given food to these people, but there are signs in the subway. Don't even feed them.
So is the point
nothing.
Supposed to get rock bottom so that he can find that?
That's correct.
Then he has a chance to find help.
He only has a chance to find help if he assumes and he realizes and feels that this is not okay. So long as he thinks he can survive, I'm not going to change his lifestyle.
Just one quick point. My mentor, who was not Jewish in Ottawa years ago, was espousing all these very same principles. Interesting enough.
Okay.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, I want to finish a few more lines before we conclude. Okay, so Shenemar, the verse reads, Lachmacha, your bread, Yasimu Muzar Tachtecha, will replace your bread with Muzar, not Muzar, Muzar, and ain't tfuna boy because they're lacking a das, lacking a mind. The ain't mazar. What does the word mazar mean? Elisur, and the word mazar means affliction. Shneimar the verse reads, "Vayar Ephraim es chayav." Ephraim sees his sickness. The Yehuda es mazur mazurai, and Yehuda sees its mazur. In the context here, it seems like it's pain. Okay, so who's the pain going upon? I just mentioned it seemingly would mean the person who's behaving compassionately here when he shouldn't be. On a simple level, perhaps it means this person now becomes. If you're the one showing compassion to this addict, God forbid, then the addict will keep coming back to you for more and more of it, and it's just it'll never stop.
So you become part of the problem.
And you'll become part of the problem. So the Yisurim comes upon you. You end up suffering along with him because you're stuck in feeding into his state of being, which is a very terrible position to be in. And it's all started because a person wanted to be rachmanis, wanted to be compassionate, but it was in the inappropriate place. Well, it just me a few minutes. Yeah, sorry.
Just aiding and abetting.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I wanted to say about it.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah. So there's one more line that gets to what Rabbi Gimple said, which is what I wanted to conclude with, and this concludes our discussion on das. Rabbi Lezer says, "Kol adam shein by deya." Anybody who lacks deya, l'soif goyla. In the end, they'll be exiled. Shneimar, as the verse reads, "Lachein gola amim bli das." Therefore, my nation was exiled. This verse comes from Isaiah. Bli das, for lack of das. So, in the context that we're talking about here could mean a moral compass. If goyla, if exile is a state of being where a person wanders and has no home, has no anchor, has no place where they belong. So a person who lacks das, lacks connecting to the ideas about which they learn. It means even a person who learns lots of Torah but doesn't connect to it is essentially an exile. They're wandering around without a moral compass, without a aim and direction. When there's proper connectivity to the things they're learning, then there's a clear path. Here's where I belong. Here's where I go. Here's what I have to do. So this concludes our discussion on das. And tomorrow we get into another set of discussion of Rabbi Lezer with respect to being connected to scholars and and giving to charity. One second. I want to add one more thing, which is perhaps the following. Anyone who doesn't give his bread, anybody who gives his bread to someone who has no das, pain comes upon him. And we explained that on the simple level, a person feeds into somebody else's addiction. Perhaps on a little deeper level, on the Chassidish level. Pitoi, bread, is Torah. Torah is referred to as lechem, as mazon. It's explained in Tanya chapter 5, because bread is the only, food is the only, Torah is the only mitzvah that you ingest. It goes into you. Most other mitzvahs you engage in, here's a mitzvah that goes inside of you. So it's called lechem, mazon.
Like matzah.
Mazon. Sustenance.
Matzah.
Matzah is the only mitzvah. Actually, in biblical times, you have more matzah, you have more mitzvahs because you eat karbanos. But nowadays, it's either matzah, which physically goes into your body, or Torah goes into you. It goes into you as opposed to you engaging it. It goes into your mind. So it's called mazon in Kabbalah, and as Hein explains in chapter 5. So maybe it means like this: if you give lachma, you give pita, you give your bread to ein by das, you feed yourself Torah when you're lacking das. You feed yourself Torah when you don't have connectivity to the thing. What does das do? We explained in the previous classes. A person connects to the ideas about which they learned, then they have a proper emotion for Hashem, starting with humility. So what happens if a person feeds himself Torah when he lacks that das, lacks the connection to the godliness that's within Torah? Then the Torah itself becomes, as the Gemara says in Yuma, samamavis, a potion of death. The Gemara says that Torah, if a person merits, becomes a potion of life. If he doesn't merit, it becomes a potion of death. What's the merit, not merit? So this explains. If a person learns Torah with the sense that this is God's Torah, then Torah, the more Torah he learns, the more humble he is, and the more connected he is to Hashem. So it's a potion of life. But if a person learns Torah without sensing that this is God's Torah, he's lacking das, he's lacking the connection to the truth of what he's studying here, then it becomes a potion of death. Because Torah itself feeds into his ego. And the more Torah he learns, the more ego it is. So he gives himself pita, he gives himself Torah, but he has no das. Then that Torah, that pita becomes yisurin, becomes painful, because it starts to feed more and more into his ego. Maybe it's a Chassidish twist on this Gemara, not just the psychological thing we've been talking about till now.
I don't think that would apply to about Tshuva, because a lot of, speaking for myself, it starts off very intellectual. It takes a while to realize it's not just like a subject in university. And it comes to you afterwards sometimes.
Yeah. So
maybe
two things.
It's meant more for like Torah scholars who are doing this type of who are
Yeah, there are two things to say for that. Number one, like Rabbi always like to quote the Gemara, the Medrash, even the person who studies Torah for the wrong reasons, but the essence,
Light of Torah will
not just Mara is not just light. Mara is the source of light.
they're not the primary light.
Light is in Chassidus explains the difference between light versus the source of light. Means the infinite source of light itself, which is in Torah, returns the person to the right place. So even Torah, or as this says about the statement is through studying Torah for the wrong reason, a person comes to learn Torah in the right reason. And Chassidus explains the word is mitoich. So Chassidus says mitoich, from within, meaning to say the inner depth of why the person is learning Torah.
Sure.
For the wrong reason is because deep down he's learning it for the right reason. That's number one. And the second thing, but it still means the person should be conscious of how they're learning Torah. The second thing is that even for Baalei Tshuva, a lot of times, it's not the learning of Torah starts intellectual, but the initial engagement, in other words, we'll put it this way. What attracts the Jew to explore the intellectualism of Torah is the neshama. And that, in essence, is, without knowing it consciously even, is a connection to the divinity of Torah. And then the intellect comes, and then you come back to truly discovering the infinite truth of Torah. Anyway, so this concludes our discussion on Das, and God willing, tomorrow more statements from Eliezer, and mostly to do with surrounding oneself with Talmidei Chachamim, related to serving bread, because it's kind of connected to the previous Gemara we talked about today, and we're going to see perhaps how this all flows, still from the conversation about Tchias HaMesim. Have a wonderful day, everybody.